Ladies and gentlemen, friends, supporters, allies of Index and anyone else who's infiltrated, welcome to the 2013 Index on Censorship Freedom of Expression Awards. This evening is dedicated to a celebration of freedom of expression, that fundamental human right to speak out, to write, to blog, to tweet, to protest, to create art, literature and music which challenges, provokes, and may from time to time cause offence, even sometimes is scurrilous and cruel. All of that, we vigilantly remember, is a defining, if sometimes uncomfortable, characteristic of a free and civilised society anywhere. Tonight, we are here to celebrate those heroes outside the United Kingdom who've placed themselves at risk on a threatening front line as they seek not only to protect, but to acquire the right to express themselves freely. But a brief word first about our own front line. Editors and proprietors of our national newspapers and others are in a state of perplexed anxiety, if I can put it like that, as they try to decide how to react to the new legislation rushed through by the three main parties in the early hours at the start of this week to regulate the British press. Incidentally, to the dismay and consternation of many of our peers and others in the rest of the world. As I am likely to chair impartially a discussion on a radio programme called Any Questions tomorrow evening, this subject, I will say no more, save, as you will surely know, to report that Index has made its position very clear about such regulation and its implications, and is proud to have done so. Leaving aside the fundamental principles at debate and at stake, an impartial commentator may, however, I think, note that more than 2 decades ago, a British government rushed onto the statute book a piece of legislation that achieved a certain notoriety. It was called the Dangerous Dogs Act. Time alone will tell whether there are any pertinent comparisons to be drawn with that unhappy law, whether this new legislation will be a triumph for democracy or a dog's breakfast. But there has been one beneficial side effect, a small nugget of gold extracted from the fire. Index was very much to the fore in creating and delivering the defamation bill, which was, as you will know, many of you, was almost hijacked in the name of Leveson. That bill now, with all party support, will almost certainly become the law of the land. The Defamation Act should help confront a fundamental embarrassment and scandal that has undermined freedom of expression nationally and internationally for far too long. Index has always been international and national. You'll know that our magazine was founded a little over 40 years ago to publish the work of those whose freedom to express themselves was muzzled and imprisoned behind the Iron Curtain of the Cold War. From that time, Index has acquired an incomparable literary legacy. And you thought that was a slip of the tongue? I was just hoping that you were still concentrating and testing you. An incomparable literary legacy which included a great deal of heresy, with contributions from some of the 20th and 21st century's greatest writers, from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Samuel Beckett, to Václav Havel, Margaret Atwood, Umberto Eco, Salman Rushdie. And despite dire warnings about the demise of print, the magazine is not only sold all over the world, in some 6,000, I think I'm right, different institutions, university, colleges, libraries, and so forth, but helped by the generous commitment and support of our publishers, Sage, has just been thoroughly redesigned, a fresh look that reflects our ever wider international focus. It's also got much more up-to-the-minute news and commentary. In our launch issue, there is a special report section which focuses on the ways, for instance, in which free speech has been affected by the global economic crisis. When you go home this evening, you'll get your own this time free copy of the magazine, so I don't have to say how good it is. Have a look at it, and you will most certainly be required to reach the same conclusion. I said that Index began as a magazine, but that is only part, albeit an important part, of what we do. In essence, our purpose is to link high-quality journalism and advocacy with a strategy to raise public awareness at home and abroad of the ways in which individuals all over the world are deprived by one means or another of the oxygen of free expression, to promote debate about often complex issues and challenges, and to argue for changes to those laws and policies that threaten to undermine this human right. This, of course, has taken us recently into the brave new world of the internet, where we are focusing on the right to communicate, debate, and exchange information freely online in the digital age. We've singled out already 3 states: China, Iran, Belarus, but other authoritarian states and democracies as well, which are only too keen to use all manner of legal and technical weapons at their disposal to ban, suppress, or muffle open communication online. Of course, all the issues that this raises can't usefully be addressed merely in stark black and white terms. There are always, as it were, important shades of grey. And it's here that Index, with its sharp focus, its close attention to critical detail, its rigour, and its measured advocacy, can make a unique contribution in a rapidly changing digital age. Our campaigns are more international than ever as we work now with partners in Brazil and India, as well as exposing the outrages perpetrated in places like Russia, China, and Belarus. And that takes me to the main purpose of this evening, the awards. There are 4 categories: journalism, digital freedom, advocacy, and the arts. These awards are for the men, women, and even children who experience violence, threats, and imprisonment for exercising their right to free speech. Our first award this evening is the Guardian Award for Journalism, which recognises brave, determined, investigative journalism across the full range of media, including print, online, radio, and television. There were an unprecedented number of entries in this category from Kenya and Mexico to Iceland and Cuba. But before coming to this, I want just to say a little bit more about the overall role played by those who, in all 4 categories, have done so much. Many of them appear not to realise that they are heroes, that they've stood up to injustice, felt compelled to write about the truth, to create bold art, or to speak out on behalf of others. Those with power and influence in their countries have tried to silence them. Tonight, we are doing exactly the opposite. We want to tell the world about their bravery, about the importance of what they're saying, and in some cases, as you will hear, about the dangerous situations they found themselves and still find themselves in. And the winner of the Guardian Award for Journalism is Kostas Vαξεβάνης. Before I ask Kostas to come up onto the stage to collect his award, let's hear from the judges of this award.
Kostas Vαξεβάνης really stood out. As a true journalist, he was exposing what other people didn't want to be exposed. Not only did he shed a light on Greek tax evasion, but on press freedom as a whole.
The prosecution of Kostas Vαξεβάνης by Greek authorities show that even in the EU, freedom of expression should not be taken for granted, because here too governments are trying to maintain the political status quo by cracking down on journalists and free expression.
So would you now welcome up to the stage the winner of the Guardian Award for Journalism, Kostas Vαξεβάνης.
Good evening. Στη δημοσιογραφία συνηθίζουμε να αποδίδουμε είτε μαγικές ικανότητες, είτε την ευθύνη για τα πάντα. Και οι δύο ερμηνείες είναι λάθος. Δημοσιογραφία είναι ο δρόμος, πολλές φορές μοναχικός, της αλήθειας. Ακούω πάρα πολλές φορές συναδέλφους να μιλούν για την αντικειμενικότητα της δημοσιογραφίας, σαν να πρόκειται για ένα μαυσολείο που πρέπει να προσκυνήσουμε. Δεν υπάρχει αντικειμενικότητα. Η αντικειμενικότητα είναι ο βαθμός της ευπρέπειας του υποκειμενισμού μας. Πόσο ευπρεπείς, τίμοι και επαγγελματίες είμαστε μέσα σε έναν κόσμο που όλα είναι σχετικά. Και πόσο αποφασισμένοι να πολεμήσουμε ενάντια σε παγίδες σε έναν κόσμο υπερπληροφόρησης. Συχνά λέω αυτό που ενδεχομένως να έχετε ακούσει, πως η δημοσιογραφία είναι να αποκαλύπτεις όσα οι άλλοι θέλουν να κρύψουν. Όλα τα άλλα είναι δημόσιες σχέσεις. Πρέπει να το κάνεις με σεβασμό στα ανθρώπινα δικαιώματα και την προσωπικότητα των ανθρώπων. Αλλά σίγουρα πρέπει να το κάνεις. Στην Ελλάδα τα τελευταία χρόνια η δημοσιογραφία δεν έχει καμία σχέση με την αλήθεια. Ένας διεφθαρμένος πυρήνας κυβερνά τη χώρα. Στο κέντρο του είναι επιχειρηματίες που κάνουν ό,τι θέλουν και συνήθως κλείνουν δουλειές με το κράτος. Στη συνέχεια οι πολιτικοί νομοθετούν ως κοινοί μαφιόζοι για να εξυπηρετήσουν και πολλές φορές να νομιμοποιήσουν αυτούς τους πολιτικούς, τους επιχειρηματίες. Και στο τέλος, οι δημοσιογράφοι δεν λένε κουβέντα. Υπάρχουν αμέτρητα παραδείγματα που μπορώ να αναφέρω. Η σύλληψή μου είναι ένα από τα πράγματα αυτά, από τα παραδείγματα. Επί 2 ολόκληρα χρόνια το κράτος αρνιόταν επίμονα να αξιοποιήσει τη λίστα Λαγκάρντ με πιθανούς φοροφυγάδες. Όταν τη δημοσίευσα, οδηγήθηκα από ειδικές δυνάμεις της αστυνομίας στο δικαστήριο. Αθωώθηκα βέβαια, αλλά η ίδια η εισαγγελία ακύρωσε την αθωωτική απόφαση, επιθυμώντας μάλλον κάποια άλλη απόφαση. Τις ίδιες περίπου μέρες, ο Guardian αποκάλυψε βασανιστήρια από την ελληνική αστυνομία. Τα ελληνικά μέσα ενημέρωσης δεν είπαν το παραμικρό. Ο Έλληνας υπουργός έφτασε στο σημείο να κάνει αγωγές στην εφημερίδα γιατί έλεγε την αλήθεια. Πριν από μερικές μέρες, το περιοδικό μου, το Hot Dog, αποκάλυψε πως ένα από τα βασικότερα στελέχη της Νέας Δημοκρατίας, του κόμματος του Έλληνα Πρωθυπουργού, ήταν συνεργάτης της ελληνικής Χούντας. Η κυβέρνηση αρνήθηκε να απαντήσει. Τα ελληνικά μέσα ενημέρωσης δεν έκαναν καμιά αναφορά στο θέμα. Κι όμως, το ελληνικό σύνταγμα, η ελληνική δημοκρατία, απαιτεί σεβασμό στον τύπο. Η ελληνική δημοκρατία έχει γίνει μια υβριδική δημοκρατία. Έχεις δικαίωμα να ψηφίσεις κάθε 4 χρόνια φυσικά. Αλλά αυτοί που κυβερνούν αναλαμβάνουν να ψηφίσουν προκλητικούς νόμους για τους οποίους οι πολίτες δεν θα μάθουν ποτέ από τα μέσα ενημέρωσης. Οι ίδιοι οι υπουργοί είναι σε διαρκή ατιμωρησία με ένα πρωτοφανή νόμο που υπάρχει που δεν τους αποδίδει ποτέ ευθύνες. Οι ιδιοκτήτες των μέσων μαζικής ενημέρωσης είναι οι επιχειρηματίες που σε στενή σχέση με το πολιτικό σύστημα ορίζουν τι είναι νόμιμο και βέβαια τι πρέπει να μαθευτεί στον κόσμο. Το πρακτορείο Reuters πρόσφατα είχε μια πολύ σκληρή εμπειρία όταν προσπάθησε να κάνει μια έρευνα για τα μίντια στην Ελλάδα. Εναντίον του εξαπολύθηκε μια επίθεση που το εμφάνιζε ότι θέλει να καταστρέψει την Ελλάδα. Πολλές φορές πολλοί ισχυρίζονται πως δεν υπάρχει θύμωμα του τύπου στην Ελλάδα. Για παράδειγμα, λένε αφού ο Βαξεβάνης μπορεί να γράφει και να λέει ό,τι θέλει. Η ελευθερία του τύπου δεν ορίζεται ως μια στιγμιαία απεικόνηση κάποιων πληροφοριών, αλλά από το περιβάλλον μέσα στο οποίο μπορεί να λειτουργεί ελεύθερα η δημοσιογραφία. Πριν από ένα ακριβώς χρόνο, εκδώσαμε έναν ανεξάρτητο περιοδικό, το Hot Dog, ένα περιοδικό έρευνας. Πέρα από τις νομικές περιπέτειες, προσπάθησαν να μας εμφανίσουν ως δημοσιογράφους συγκεκριμένης πολιτικής απόχρωσης, ότι συνεργαζόμασταν με μυστικές υπηρεσίες, ότι είμαστε αναξιόπιστοι. Δέχτηκα επίθεση στο σπίτι μου από 5 άτομα, αλλά η ελληνική αστυνομία το εμφάνισε ως μια απλή απόπειρα κλοπής. Προσπαθούν να εκφοβήσουν και να εξοντώσουν οποιαδήποτε ανεξάρτητη φωνή την ώρα που η Ελλάδα τρώει από τα σκουπίδια. Απαγόρευσαν με απόφαση του Συμβουλίου Ραδιοτηλεόρασης να δείχνει εικόνες φτώχειας, οι οποίες όμως υπάρχουν. Ζούμε σε μια ενωμένη Ευρώπη με σκληρές αντιθέσεις. Η Ευρώπη δεν μπορεί να παραβλέπει ούτε τον πολιτισμό της, ούτε την παράδοση της ελευθερίας που έχει. Είμαι περήφανος που γεννήθηκα σε μια χώρα που γέννησε τη δημοκρατία και τον πολιτισμό. Αλλά η δημοκρατία είναι σαν το ποδήλατο. Αν δεν κάνεις συνέχεια πεντάλ, θα πέσεις. Η δημοσιογραφία σήμερα δεν μπορεί να είναι μια απλή καταγραφή γεγονότων. Οφείλει να είναι μια μάχη ενάντια στη βαρβαρότητα και τη συσκότηση. Σε αυτή την ήπειρο πρέπει να ξανανακαλύψουμε τις πανανθρώπινες ιδέες και φυσικά το ρόλο της δημοσιογραφίας. Στις 6 Ιουνίου δικάζουμε και πάλι για την αποκάλυψη της λίστας Λαγκάρντ. Δεν ξέρω ποια θα είναι η έκβαση της δίκης. Θέλω όμως να σας δηλώσω πως αν καταδικαστώ δεν θα ασκήσω έφεση και θα ζητήσω να οδηγηθώ στη φυλακή. Γιατί θέλω να δημοσιογραφώ σε μια χώρα που δεν φοβάται την αλήθεια. Θέλω την αλήθεια των ανθρώπων και όχι μιας κάστας διεφθαρμένων πολιτικών και επιχειρηματιών. Δεν θέλω οι κάτοικοι της χώρας μου να διαβάζουν ξένο τύπο για να μάθουν τι έγινε στη χώρα της, όπως γινόταν τα χρόνια της Χούντας. Θέλω να μην κινδυνεύω, όπως κάθε δημοσιογράφος, από αυτά που αποκαλύπτω. Θέλω να μην κινδυνεύω να εμφανιστώ ως ύποπτος δημοσιογράφος επειδή λέω τα αυτονόητα από τους προπαγανδιστές μιας εξουσίας που έφερε τη χώρα μου στο χείλος του γκρεμού. Θέλω να μπορώ να πω όσα σκέφτομαι χωρίς τον κίνδυνο βιολογικής ή ψυχολογικής καταστροφής μου. Θέλουν μια δημοσιογραφία φημωμένη. Θέλουμε μια δημοσιογραφία με κοινωνικές ευαισθησίες και αλήθειες. Σας ευχαριστώ. Thank you very much.
Our second award is for digital freedom. It's sponsored by Google. This prize recognizes groundbreaking work in the digital realm and the field of new technology to promote free expression and to act against threats to freedom online. These threats are part of the wider question, of course, of who controls the internet. Many of us, most of us, probably everyone here, use the internet every day, and yet our right, I'm not sure I like the term, but as netizens, remains largely undefined. While we, in 2012, we saw Russia and China leading efforts by nervous and authoritarian states to clamp down severely on the net. Every one of our shortlists has been courageous, active, and innovative defenders of our internet freedom, doing essential work to secure a free and open internet for all those who want to use it. Well, as we heard, Basil, of course, can't be here because he is in prison in Syria, and therefore he can't collect the award. Instead, though, it's going to be collected by two of his friends, Dana Trometer and John Phillips. If they would come up, please. Our final award this evening is for the arts. The Arts Award acknowledges talented artists, filmmakers and writers whose work is both creative and represents or defends artistic freedom and battles against repression and injustice. Artists, of course, often find themselves the focal point of vociferous attempts to silence them because they are using their gifts very often to identify uncomfortable truths about us and their own societies, which of course brings them then under the scrutiny of authorities and other critics who don't like seeing or hearing what they feel and think. Index was founded, as I said, by writers and continues, therefore, to campaign for artistic free expression. Every member of the shortlist has demonstrated courage as well as talent and creativity. And the winner of the Index Arts Award is Zanele Moholi.
Good evening. I don't know where to start. This X is not for me, but this X is for many LGBTI people who are still fighting different kinds of oppression in Africa. Some of you might know the situation in Uganda, in which the government introduced the anti-homosexuality bill in 2009, but failed because a lot of activists agitated. And some people abroad, they came together and to fight that kind of oppression. I'd like to express my gratitude for your presence here. And I don't know really what to say exactly, but I'll say it unplugged without looking at the speech. Thanks to the judges for thinking of us. Like I said, it's not about Zanele Mkholi, but about the people who are featuring in my work, and made sure that our voices are heard, they brave their lives to ensure that they are in front of the camera in order for me to make sense.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm greatly honoured to be asked to speak to you this evening, as I was greatly honoured when I was invited to become a patron of Index on censorship, which seemed to me then and seems to be now one of the most valuable, most important organisations in the country. Kirsty and others have described what I'm about to say as a keynote speech. I demur from anything quite so grand as that. I once spoke to a very experienced orator who told me that the three most beautiful words in the English language were finally, in conclusion. All I'm really here to do is to say rah, rah, rah for this great, truly great organisation. Like Kirsty and like probably everybody in this room, I feel absolutely humbled in the face of the extraordinary courage, tenacity, generosity of all the nominees and all the winners. I simply wanted to draw attention here to what, again, Kirsty very correctly identified as the kind of range of Index on censorship. These great and extraordinary and towering acts of heroism of which we've heard this evening are a part of a spectrum which equally deals with the small areas in which censorship rears its head, in which freedom of speech is suppressed, freedom of expression is suppressed. Obviously, I have a vested professional interest in freedom of expression. And it's worth noting that the theatre was an area which was more infested by censorship, overt and indeed legitimised censorship, than almost any other art, or pretty well any other public sphere in this country. And just is worth remembering that it was only in 1968 that censorship was finally abolished. It had a healthy 250-year reign before that, and even before it was made official by the Theatres Act of Robert Walpole, in the 18th century, there was always censorship. Indeed, I had the great pleasure of playing Queen Elizabeth I's censor, Sir Edmund Tilney, in Shakespeare in Love, a great deal of which was shot about 10 minutes away from here in Middle Temple. And censorship has been attached to and associated with the theatre for as long as most people could remember, until it was finally abolished. And to touch just very slightly and lightly on the territory that Zanele has so powerfully spoken of, it's very fascinating that one of the great briefs of the Censor's office, the Lord Chamberlain's office, the Comptroller of Plays, one of his great briefs was to ensure that there was no representation, no allusion to, no mention of homosexuality. It was absolutely banned from the mainstream of theatrical expression, homosexuality, although, of course, many of the people who were making theatre were themselves gay. It was banned utterly. Until, of course, the Wolfenden report made it impossible, really, for the subject to be avoided. It had to be named, and so this ban was gently removed, although the Lord Chamberlain still reserved the right to allow the word pansy, but to ban the word bugger. A small triumph for censorship. But of course, we know the name of Belarus has been mentioned several times tonight, that our colleagues, Juliet Stevenson's colleagues and mine, in the Belarus Free Theatre and all over the world there are theatre practitioners who are savagely punished, savagely restricted, savagely suppressed and repressed, imprisoned, and in some cases even murdered. When I was a trainee actor, I worked with a director who was on the same course. He was in fact a mature student, and he had escaped from Iran under the Shah in those days for directing a production of King Richard III on the grounds he was imprisoned for directing this because the Shah had issued a diktat that no play in which the death of a king was to be represented would ever be allowed on the Iranian stage. The tragic story of Rokneddin is that he came to England, he trained, and he went back to post-revolutionary Iran and was instantly put into prison again, where, as far as I know, he died. So these things touch us all in all areas. But the constant patrolling, the incessant vigilance of Index on Censorship ensures, it absolutely guarantees our freedom and our freedom of speech. And I was reminded, I say this finally in conclusion, I was reminded of course, the great speech made by President Andrew Jackson, his farewell address, in fact, in 1837. And he said, it was, I believe, who coined this great phrase. He said, you must remember, my fellow citizens, he said, that eternal vigilance by the people is the price of liberty, and that you must pay the price if you wish to secure the blessing. And Index on Censorship pays the price, and God bless it. Thank you.
Simon, thank you so much for your support and for speaking here with such characteristic eloquence. I would like, in some respects, as I've been up here much too long, to say finally in conclusion, but I'm not, and you will be glad that I'm not going to say it, because I want to invite another very important supporter of Index to come to the stage. I say important not so much because she's one of the nation's finest actors, which she undoubtedly is, but because, like Simon, she supports Index not only in principle, but in practice as well. And she is here because I very much hope, expect, indeed I am certain, she's going to work her magic on you. Juliet Stevenson.
Yes, I'm the pitch. I don't think I need to say very much, actually. I think what has been said in this room tonight has been incredibly inspiring, and it's been said before, but I will say it again, humbling. It's been an education in itself to be part of this company tonight, and I'm very, very privileged to be here. One of the most extraordinary moments in my week has been seeing the photograph of your daughter on the front of the newspaper, walking to her first day at school in Edgbaston. And I was moved to tears by seeing that image of a girl on a pavement with a backpack on her back, talking about her uniform, the badge on her jumper, which denoted which house she'd been assigned to, that very English institution, and her hopes that she would make friends in her new school because she was missing her friends in Pakistan. A schoolgirl on a pavement, the most ordinary sight, but the most extraordinary young woman. So, we live in a world where a girl can be shot for simply insisting on the right to go to school, where a man whose creative and extraordinary work to open up the freedom of the internet to many more people is put in prison, where a journalist who exposes corruption is treated as a criminal, and when is arrested, charged, and found not guilty, is prosecuted all over again. A world where a very gifted artist makes beautiful and evocative images which are condemned because their truth and beauty are perceived as offensive. Torchbearers, all of you. And it is this darker side of our world today that Index on Censorship has been trying to change for the last 40 years. Index has fought and campaigned tirelessly on behalf of people like Malala, Basil, Kostas, and Zanele. Because, of course, for each one of these amazing winners, there are thousands of others whose courage in the pursuit of free expression, in the face of repression, is going unremarked, and for which they pay a great price. And sometimes it's hard not to feel overwhelmed by a sense of injustice and by feelings of anger and powerlessness. But of course, there is lots that we can do too. So let's be inspired and become active ourselves. There are many things, and the greatest of all these things that we can do is to talk about free speech. The right to free speech in all parts of the world depends on speaking about that right, arguing for it, and insisting on it. This is what Index does. So we can do something that goes beyond all our individual voices by supporting Index and its vital work. Index campaigns with energy and passion and expertise. It pours in volunteers a great deal and makes a little money go a very long way, but it can't operate without your support. So, here's the pitch. If everyone in this room gave 25 quid, that would make nearly £10,000, and that would help Index campaign on behalf of people like tonight's winners. And it gets better because the Arts Council has pledged to match all these donations under the Catalyst funding scheme. With this extra support, Index can set up training programs for journalists, bloggers, and activists who are silenced in countries like Azerbaijan, Belarus, and Bahrain. Index can target a set of lobby missions for digital freedom into the UN, the EU, and key capitals around the world. And they can organise 5 unique events matched with 5 new publications targeting media and artistic freedom in Burma, in India, and here in the UK. So, 25 quid. It's a cab fare, it's half a ticket for an ultimately disappointing West End play. With great respect, Simon. It's a couple of tube fares, the way things are going. And